All right, so the main thing here is, obviously, there's a lot of air purifiers out there. What I'm trying to do is help bring awareness to people looking at air purification or filtration to their facility on how choosing the right air purifier now can really save a lot of money, headache, and hassle going forward. So obviously, right, we're using it to try to protect against COVID-19, whether it be the Delta variant, Omicron. It's going to be helpful towards pretty much anything like that. It's also helpful towards flu, colds, bacteria. So there's a lot of benefits just beyond COVID-19. So really trying to think of this as a long-term investment into reducing sick time, increasing productivity, increasing student scores, especially with staff struggles that people are having, hiring enough, just keeping people from getting sick and being unhealthy. So COVID has really woken people up to it, but it really goes a lot past COVID itself. ASHRAE and CDC are recommending the use of them. It's an easy way to skip trying to revamp your entire HVAC system or add an entire HVAC system. Just wheel it in, plug it in. The hard part, like I was saying earlier, is a lot of them may seem inexpensive up front. Maybe they're a couple $100, maybe they're under, they're $500-600. But the problem is they're typically from the past have been residential type air purifiers. And they're built to be low cost up front, but high cost to maintain, because a residential market is very cost competitive and very price sensitive, whereas commercial thinks long term. So I've seen a lot of people spend a couple $100 only to spend hundreds of dollars per year on maintenance when they could spend a little bit more, or in that way save quite a bit per year going forward. So it's really important to take a look at how often are you changing out filters, how much are those filters, what's the energy use, and how many of these do you need? And ASHRAE and CDC try to help guide this by saying, right, you need the right amount of air rotations per hour, you need the right amount of flow patterns. So that way you're not having to stick 2 units in a room or do it in an ineffective way that after a bit your COVID rates are still increasing and the administration or parents are coming back and you're having to buy more just to improve your effectiveness. Like I was saying, most air purifiers are designed for homes. Everybody's kind of trying to rush into this commercial market to get some part of this large influx in demand. Problem is, these small air purifiers that you'll see online you can buy, they're okay for your bedroom because that's what they're designed for. 1 people, 2 to 3 or 4, not for 30 and close density, trying to maintain multiple air changes per hour. That's why they're just not effective for classrooms, cafeterias, or other spaces where it's in a commercial setting. They're maintenance heavy. To save costs, what they do is they make the filters really small. And it's a real headache, especially now with the, I've never heard any facility teams or maintenance teams say, hey, I've got extra free time. I want to just maintain air purifiers all the time. You're talking, everybody here, they're strained, they're maxed out. No, people don't want more work. And it's true. And a lot of these air purifiers, they're building it for a bedroom. Sure, it doesn't matter if you change and maintain it every month, change out a filter every 2 months and wipe it down clean. But geez, if you're talking multiple units or 100 units or 1,000 units, I mean, it becomes a real nightmare really quick. They're not using commercial grade components. What I mean by that is efficient motors with sealed bearings that are designed to last 24/7, 365 for over 11 years. They're not using metal, right? It's not geared for that commercial environment. A residential environment, you don't have contractors come in, kids beating up on it, masses of people. It's typically your family, and there's a lot less risk in that type of environment. And they're loud, so people end up having to buy multiple. And then it was already a nightmare to maintain 1 of them. Now you got to maintain 3 of them for 1 room because their loudness, they're only quiet on their lowest setting, which is pretty much not effective at all. I mean, it'll help over the course of a day, maybe make the air clean up a little bit of the allergens, but protecting 30 people or a group of people in a close room, doing 1/8 of an air change an hour isn't going to help. It really comes down to that headache for the facilities administration team. You're dealing with the noise complaints, buying more units, maintaining units, cleaning them, vacuuming. There's just an easier way to do it. I'm just looking at commercial grade units that are geared towards not being a maintenance nightmare, being quiet enough, not requiring a lot of maintenance, and just not impacting your normal day life. Because nobody wants a hobby of, hey, what do you do for a job? Oh, I just maintain air purifiers 24/7. Nobody wants that. And that's what really went into our design, is make sure they're going to be long life. You set it, forget it. It's a long-term investment, because schools people are getting federal funding now to make these changes because the government sees we need to improve our ventilation and filtration. Problem is, in the future, when the money's gone, how are you going to maintain and operate and pay for all this maintenance? And by investing in something that is far less operational cost, it's going to allow you to have sustainable operation for something that's really maintenance heavy and expensive to run, having to throw it out after a couple of years. So we save facilities, whether it's commercial, industrial, educational, a lot of money by simply building it for that commercial space with the long life component and effective air distribution. I'm going to go into each one of these a bit more. Having proper CFM and low noise levels, so you're not having to have multiple units, which means multiple things to maintain. Using less energy. I haven't seen energy costs go down yet. I think they're pretty much just going to keep going up. We do that by using high quality fans that have the proper fan curves and aren't energy hogs. Having a filter life of 4 to 5 years, not months, and making them out of metal. And this is why, as you can see, some examples: GE, New York City Fire Department, Michigan State, St. Paul College, Greenfield Public Schools, various commercial and educational facilities have chosen us and trust us for protecting their facilities because of not only the effectiveness, but the fact that we save them money versus so much else what's out there.
Hey, Kevin, I have a quick question.
Yeah.
The unit that's pictured there looks like a fire station or something, or I don't know. I'm just looking at the picture of the guy.
The picture here.
So yeah, that unit,
Yep.
is that the intake, or is that where the air is coming out on top?
Good question. We do a pull low and discharge high.
Okay.
And we do that because we don't want particles over time fall to the floor. I don't want to be pushing air that's falling to the ground or particles back up, mixing basically germs back into that breathing zone.
Yeah.
By pulling high, I'm keeping that natural state and preferred state of air distribution of pull low, distribute high. So you're helping safeguard that breathing zone.
So the intake's on the bottom of the unit?
Yep.
Or it's on the other side?
It's right here on the bottom of the unit. So it's nice that you can push it right up against the wall.
Okay, yeah, that's what I was curious about. Wow, that's
Yep.
good. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, not a problem. So when it comes to CFM, a lot of people play games, clean air delivery rate. That's really meant for, if you look into that, they test in an 8x8 or an 8x12 by 8 box. Really need to take a look at how many CFM do you need to provide air changes for your space. Simple way to do that is measure your room length by width by your ceiling height. That'll give you your cubic feet. That's going to divide that by 60 for 60 minutes. That's going to give you the value, CFM value that you need to get 1 air change an hour. And then from there, if you determine, hey, I need 2 air changes or 3, you can multiply that value out. This will give you a fair value across the board of what CFM do I need to achieve that air changes an hour to actually protect my commercial facility. Because a lot of them, again, their noise levels seem great until you turn them up to what you need for that CFM. So what happens is everybody turns them on low, and then they start making the news or the papers about people getting sick, and then they start finding out the air purifiers aren't plugged in, teachers are complaining, because they're not designed to be in a commercial environment. So I really urge people to take a look, determine what CFM you need for whether you're trying to hit those minimum of 2 air changes an hour, and what the noise level at that CFM will be for the unit you're looking at. Now, on your point earlier about discharging high or pulling low, big thing on the effectiveness for an air purifier is because they're designed for residential applications, they're not built to throw that air over large spaces. So what happens is you end up re-cleaning already cleaned air. Now you'll clean some of the dirty air, but there's a portion of that that's being re-cleaned and it's already clean air. So you're not getting these real world air changes. People can calculate funny number of air changes all they want on paper all day. Problem is, how is it distributing that air in the real world environment, which is one of that third points there underneath the ASHRAE guidance. Make sure you have the proper mixing of the air distribution in that space. And this is exactly what they're referring to. Because when you distribute it properly, you're discharging high, you're pulling low, you're creating a proper cycle and maximizing the cleaning of dirty air. There's no point to re-clean already cleaned air. I want to maximize my unit cleaning as much dirty air as I can. So I get that proper dirty air, clean air discharge to that dirty air. And again, don't want to discharge them high because I don't want to push those particles back up into that breathing zone. So all you're doing then is just pushing it around and getting it more into where people are going to breathe it in.
So is there a recommendation to put a unit closer to where the air intake is for that room?
So by having it, if your room does have an existing HVAC system, one nice thing that happens is your return air is gonna pick up that clean air and redistribute it throughout the rest of your facility.
Right.
So that is one nice thing. When you have the units properly set up, it's not going to be a huge difference throughout your room of trying to get that clean air back to your intake. Because if you leave that unit, just let it run, or you have it run throughout the day rather than turning it on for 30 minutes and then turning it back off, it's going to be constantly cleaning that room. That's one advantage of having it dedicated to that room and leaving it on. It's in that space, providing those multiple air changes an hour, and then throughout your facility, when your return air picks that up, it's going to help distribute that elsewhere as well. Because your return air, when you're recirculating, unless you're running 100% outside air, which is difficult for a lot of people to do depending on your climate, you're probably looking at recycling 85 to 90% of your air. Commercial grade components. Again, I want to show you our fan here in a minute. But it really comes down to investing on the front end into the fan. It's the heart of the unit. And this is going to basically influence how loud your unit is, how much energy it uses, and how much CFM you're able to get. And when your fan goes out, the unit's pretty much useless. So having a unit that has sealed bearings, you're not having to oil it. It's built to run 11 years at 24/7, 365 for over that time frame. So you're not getting a unit that's going to last a couple months or a couple years. You're getting something that is an investment into your facility. It also comes down to what type of filters you're using. Commercial grade, high capacity filters, so you're not having to change it out all the time. And then again, with the 22 gauge steel construction, people are going to bump it, kids are going to hit it. You want it to survive. No sense in spending a bunch of money on a unit that's going to be broke from people messing with it after a year or two. I want to show you a little bit on our fan here. Just going to stop share. So you'll get an idea. This is an example of one of our fans. It's bigger and heavier than entire air purifier units itself. The reason we do this is so the fan and the motor aren't running super hard. What that does is when you size that fan and motor properly, it's a lot quieter and uses a lot less electricity versus operating a really small motor with a really inefficient cheap fan at its max point, screaming, it's going to use a lot more electricity. Just to give you an idea, I mean, our biggest unit there will use about the same amount of electricity as some of these small units because of how inefficient their fans are. But thing is, a lot of people aren't taking consideration what that really is. I have some fun equations here in a little bit to show you. Now the HEPA filter So here's a typical example of, actually this is probably bigger than a lot of other ones out there right now. It's about 1.25 inches deep, needs replacement every 3 to 4 months. Probably heard of Purifier. Now, let's take a look at our HEPA filter. 3 to 4 months, 4 to 5 years. This costs about $137. This is around $300. Now, if you take into account labor time, ordering it, doing it 4 times a year, doing it once every presidential term, there's huge savings there. This filter, to give you an idea, is high capacity, medical grade, 99.99% HEPA. So these are the same ones used in an operating room. We've actually, as a company, we've actually been involved in HVAC for our whole lives. So we've done operating rooms, we've worked with fumigation, pharmacies. We got into this at the beginning of the pandemic to provide for hospitals, but then obviously everybody else needed it. What that experience gave us is we're familiar with the components such as high grade ECM fans, high capacity HEPA filters, to make a device that's not going to be a maintenance nightmare for people. And this weighs probably about 30 pounds. The other one weighs about 2 pounds.
Yeah.
But again, you know, on the front end of it looks, you know, it's cheaper, but I mean, you'll spend $600 on filters a year, and really, yeah, it gets a bit scary there for a lot of administration teams. On the quiet operation, just to give you an idea, for classrooms, the big thing is to get between that 40 to 50 dBA, or whether a commercial facility, classroom. Really the main thing there is you don't want to be competing with other people's voices. So if I'm trying to talk and it's at 60 dBA, it's fighting with me and it's too loud. And that's why you see on the news, everybody's turning these air purifiers down because they're too loud. The problem is those air purifiers that they have, to get the CFM they need, they're only quiet on low. They're putting out 55 to 70 dBA at the proper CFM. So then they end up either having to buy more, get rid of them and get different ones. Again, just causing a lot of challenges. So for areas where you're like classroom or meeting room, shoot for that 40 to 50 dBA. Larger areas, like a cafeteria, gymnasium, open hallways, meeting areas, 50 to 60 dBA is better because you have such an open area. You're not sitting as close to that unit. It disperses the sound. Now, one neat thing here is a change in 10 dBA is doubling of noise, because dBA scale is not linear. So if you go from 40 to 50 dBA, that's actually doubling the noise. So there's a significant difference between a unit that's 45 and a unit that's 55. You go from having a unit you can move, you know, go about your life and talk and not have it disrupt, versus a unit that's going to be too loud and have to be turned down and not do the job that you bought it for in the first place. So replacement filter costs, doing some fun math. If you take a look, let's say a $250 HEPA filter, got 5 years on it, it's about $50 per year if you allocated it. Competitor example uses 4 sets of filters at $130 a piece. You're talking about $520 per year. If you look at the pre-filters, we use a high capacity MERV 8 pre-filter. Lasts 3 to 4 months. It's about $32 a year. Competitors, they put a lot of markup on it. They're probably running between 20 to $30 a pre-filter. They last a month, maybe 2 months. Talking about $150 per year. So right away, you've gone from $50 a year to $520 a year, or 32 to 120 to 150 a year. That's simply because how much filter media do you have? Now, what a lot of them do is they try to include a whole bunch of other features and extra filters that may not really need, but it helps them get more filter buyouts. So here's a scary thing. So imagine, put yourself in the shoes, you got 500 of these units, but you have to air dry for 24 hours after cleaning. So your team has to walk around, clean all these things, set them aside, 24 hours later, go back and put them all back together. Whether it's vacuuming, washing of extra pre-filters, cleaning of some weird electronic pieces within it, it really adds up, even if it's only 10 to 15 minutes. Because consider what that 10 to 15 minutes is every couple months based on labor rates. For ISO-Aire, all you got to do is we have a toolless access to our pre-filter. Takes less than a minute to change. That's it. There's no vacuuming. There's no cleaning. You're not having to wipe down electronic cleaner surfaces or recharge carbon filters. It's as low as a maintenance as we can get it. Another piece here is a lot of other companies out there have all these front gadgets of dials and changes that people can easily change, turn off, modify. We built ours to have the controls behind a panel that you can also have it be sort of a non-tamper-proof panel. So that way people or kids or visitors aren't turning it off, turning it up, messing with the settings. People aren't trying to buy an iPad for an air purifier in the room. They're trying to buy a device that protect the space, not disrupt it, and move about their lives. Energy use. So rough math, it varies for everybody, obviously. Average cost US, you're probably looking around 10 to 11 cents per kilowatt hour. If you take approximately 100 watts of usage, just as an example, you're looking at $100 a year, run it 365, 24/7. So our units, for this example, use around 30 to 50 watts. That's about 30 to 50 bucks a year. General math. Competitor, for example, though, you're talking 200 to 400 watts. That means $200 to $400 per year. So that $200 you just saved up front buying a little bit less expensive unit, you just spent alone on the electricity to power it for that year.
So that 30 to 50 watts is what in what time period usage?
1 year, running it 24/7, just 365. Again, on the construction, obviously metal versus plastic, 22 gauge steel is going to last a lot longer. But again, you invested in the investment, you want it to last, so you're not having to fix it, repair it, get new bodies, get new units. You want to move on and get back to doing what you're there to do, whether it's to teach, to protect, to build, whatever your job is, just trying to create that space to be safe again, not to having to worry about fixing units, repairing units. So gave a lot of math, whether it be the main filters of the HEPA, the pre-filters, additional cleaning, energy use. But I wanted to put together an example here to really put this in a real life example of buying multiple units. So if you take a look, over here on the left, we have ISO-Aire, and on the right, we have a typical competitor. And now this is a final comparison on the cost per year. So in 1 year, an allocation of 82 bucks for pre-filters, and then 50 bucks for that, allocating for that HEPA filter. Competition is about 670 bucks. Additional maintenance or cleaning, we're zero because we don't have any extra stuff to clean. About 60 bucks on the other one. 40 bucks for energy, 200 bucks for energy for the competitor. Works out to be about 122 bucks a year to run 24/7, or the competitor, $930 a year. Wow, that's a lot. But what about when you multiply that by equipping for your entire facility? We would be at about $61,000, or the competition would be at $465,000. I realize I typed my math wrong right here. But you get the idea, you're saving $400,000 off of something that may have cost more up front, but in 1 year, far less than a 1-year payback. And now all those years going forward, that's $400,000 of savings that you would have had to pay out. Thoughts, ideas, questions?